Imagine walking into a dinner party where every single chair is a weapon, where you sit dictates your entire worth as a human being. In the first century Roman and Jewish world, the dining table was called a triclinium. It was a U-shaped arrangement of couches. The closer you sat to the host, the higher your social honor. It was a brutal system of honor and shame. To be moved down the table in front of your peers wasn't just embarrassing, it was a public humiliation that could destroy your reputation. In Luke chapter 14, Jesus is invited to a Sabbath dinner at the house of a prominent Pharisee. The gospel tells us that Jesus was watching closely. He noticed how the guests were scrambling, maneuvering, and fighting to claim the places of honor at the table. Every smile was calculated. Every seating choice was a deliberate move to climb the social ladder. And at the center of it all sat the host, mentally keeping a ledger of who owed him a favor for being invited. Jesus sees right through the veneer. He recognizes that they aren't treating this as a dinner. They are treating it as a battlefield. So Jesus decides to break the tension. He opens his mouth and entirely destroys the seating chart. Jesus breaks the tension with a radical piece of advice. He says, when you are invited by someone to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honor, for someone more distinguished than you may have been invited. If so, the host who invited both of you will come and say to you, give this person your seat. Then, humiliated, you will have to take the least important place. But when you are invited, take the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he will say to you, friend, move up to a better place. Then you will be honored in the presence of all the other guests. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. But Jesus doesn't stop there. He turns his attention directly to the host. When you give a luncheon or dinner, do not invite your friends, your brothers or sisters, your relatives, or your rich neighbors. If you do, they may invite you back, and so you will be repaid. He destroys the ancient patron-client system of networking. In the Roman world, this was called do ut des, I give so that you may give. Every invitation was an investment. Every gift was a debt. Jesus shatters this entire worldview by commanding the host to do the unthinkable. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, people who can never pay him back, bringing them into the heart of the banquet. And you will be blessed, although they cannot repay you. You will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. A nervous guest tries to lighten the mood. Blessed is he who will eat at the feast in the kingdom of God. The guest assumes he already has a VIP ticket. Jesus responds with the parable of the Great Banquet. He says, a certain man was preparing a great banquet and invited many guests. But when the servant goes to tell them the food is ready, they all begin to make excuses. The first says, I have just bought a field and I must go and see it. In the ancient world, buying land unseen is absurd. Another says, I have just bought 5 yoke of oxen and I'm on my way to try them out. Another blatant lie. No one buys oxen without testing them first. Still another says, I just got married so I can't come. These weren't polite regrets. In an honor/shame culture, these coordinated excuses were a deliberate, brutal social boycott meant to humiliate the host. The servant returns to the host to deliver the coordinated excuses. The insult is complete. The host is angry, but his grace is unstoppable. He refuses to cancel the banquet. He commands the servant, go out quickly into the streets and alleys of the town, and bring in the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame. The servant runs into the dark, dusty city slums, finding the marginalized hiding in the shadows. He takes the blind gently by the hand, lifting the lame out of the dirt. The poor and the broken are escorted directly into the lavish triclinium. Imagine the stark, beautiful contrast. Dirty rags resting on the opulent silk cushions meant for the elite. Calloused, empty hands being served the finest roasted meats and aged wine. But the grace of the host is still not satisfied. The servant returns. Sir, what you ordered has been done. but there is still room. The host gives an even more radical command, expanding the scope entirely. Go out to the roads and country lanes. This meant going completely outside the city limits, to the absolute outsiders, the untouchables, the Gentiles who had no connection to the host whatsoever, and compel them to come in, so that my house will be full. What does compel mean here? It wasn't about violent force. These people felt completely unworthy to enter a rich man's house. They had to be desperately convinced that the invitation was real, that the host actually wanted them. The kingdom of God is not an exclusive country club. It is a desperate search and rescue mission. And the result is the most magnificent, unexpected, and diverse banquet hall in human history. But in Matthew chapter 22, Jesus tells a parallel version of this story, and he adds a terrifying detail that changes everything. When the banquet hall is completely full of guests, both good and bad, the king comes in to see them, and he spots one man, a man who is not wearing a wedding garment. The king approaches him. "Friend," he asks, "how did you get in here without a wedding garment?" The man has absolutely no excuse. Matthew tells us, but the man was speechless. Then the king turns to his attendants, "Bind him hand and foot, and throw him outside into the darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." Wait, why would God do this? He just sent his servants to pull the broken and the marginalized out of the gutters. How can he brutally punish this man simply for not having the right clothes? To understand this, we have to look to St. Augustine and the patristic tradition of the Catholic Church. Augustine reveals that the banquet hall in this part of the parable represents the church on earth. It is a mixed body, a corpus permixtum, filled with both the good and the bad, the saints and the sinners. Everyone is invited off the streets. The doors are wide open. The invitation of baptism is free. But the wedding garment is the grace of God. It is the theological virtue of charity, of love. You can sit at the king's table. You can eat his food. You can be surrounded by the saints. But if you lack love, if you are completely devoid of sanctifying grace, you are dead inside. The man wasn't thrown out because he was poor. He was thrown out because he accepted the invitation to the kingdom, but he adamantly refused to change his clothes. He refused to change his heart. He wanted the feast, but he didn't want the king. He remained clothed in his own pride, his own sin, and his own hatred. And so, Jesus delivers one of the most chilling lines in all the Gospels, a warning to everyone sitting comfortably inside the church. For many are invited, but few are chosen. This terrifying truth forces us to ask a painful question. Are we currently wearing the wedding garment, or are we just taking up space at the table? In the Catholic tradition, the sacraments, especially confession, are how we wash and restore this garment when we stain it with sin. Without this constant cleansing of grace, our hearts become exactly like the Pharisees Jesus warned at the beginning of the dinner. Obsessed with status, consumed with who is sitting in the best seats, and entirely blind to the master who invited them. The parables of the banquet are the ultimate great equalizer. They remind us that God's grace cannot be bought, networked, or negotiated. It can only be received with the open, empty hands of a beggar. When we finally accept this, the social battlefields of our lives disappear, and we realize that the only seat that ever truly mattered was the one prepared for us at the ultimate table. As we step away from the ancient Triclinium, what do these banquet parables demand of us today? First, we must stop playing the status game. The world tells us to climb the ladder, to fight for the seats of honor, and to network with those who can repay us. But Jesus tells us to take the lowest seat. Second, we must practice radical hospitality. Look at your own life. Are you only inviting those who can benefit you? God calls us to invite the broken, the marginalized, and the outcasts, expecting absolutely nothing in return. Third, we must ensure our souls are clothed in the wedding garment. It is not enough to simply be inside the church. We must regularly wash our souls in confession and wear the fiery, glowing garment of charity. The ultimate fulfillment of these parables is the Catholic Eucharist. The altar rail is the only place on earth where the billionaire and the homeless man kneel shoulder to shoulder, opening their hands as equals. The Master has prepared the feast. The doors are wide open. Will you put on the garment of love and take your seat?